This week on Painting Lines.
Draper's getting a lot of hate on X.
Italian Open courts are, quote, dangerous and not playable. That's why you're not playing in this tournament, because you're not competitive enough.
Ready? Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we covered an eventful tournament in Madrid, and this week we'll be covering the first week of Rome. Real quick, just want to say if you're enjoying the show, feel free to subscribe. It helps us reach more listeners and would mean a lot to us. All right, Aidan, with Sinner finally back in the mix here, is he your favorite to win the tournament, or do you think that the time off he's had from playing matches is going to impact his run?
Well, I think I was skeptical coming into it. We had no idea really where he was going to come into the mix. Obviously, we know what his level is, but the question was, is there going to be any rust? And I actually saw a quote from Jim Courier as well, which was like, it doesn't seem as though there's any rust at all. And that's what I saw based on his matches. I mean, he looked pretty flawless in his first two matches. And I actually wonder whether we're going to see the opposite of Russ, where whether like his freshness from having 3 months off is going to give him an advantage here and in the French Open, where other guys have already played all of the clay court swing. They've played in a couple Masters 1000s already. And Sinner's going to be coming back fresh, 3 months off, hungry to win these tournaments. He could actually have an advantage rather than like a detriment from that time off.
Yeah. Do you think that all the pressure's on him since he is the number one seed and the number one player, or is there no pressure on him because he's just taken a few months off and, there's not really any expectation for him to win because of the potential rust?
I honestly think the more he wins, the more pressure he gets, right? Like if he
Yeah.
had come back and lost in the second round or something, we would have been like, okay, it's just rust. But if he comes back and then he wins and he makes it to the semis, you're all of a sudden being like, okay, I kind of expect him to win it based on how he's been playing. Like this is the Sinner we saw a few months ago. So that's how I feel. I think if he wins one more match, it's going to be like, okay, he's back. There's
Yeah.
no question about it, and we're going to be immediately expecting him to be winning all these tournaments and being unbeatable like he was before his break.
And this was really the perfect tournament for him to come back to because he has his home crowd. Like he's been very supported throughout all this, where I feel like it would have been pretty tough to come back in a hostile environment where people are maybe booing him and, it's not in his home country. So I
Yeah,
think this kind of helps out here too.
I definitely agree with that. I like I said when he first got banned, I feel like it was a pretty favorable time to get banned. I got some negative comments about my take on that, but I think that realistically, this is like the one time of the year where you don't miss a slam unless you're getting perfectly timing during like the off season, but
Mhm.
that was never going to happen. So of the time after the start of the season, this was like as good as it can get.
Yeah. Yeah, for all those players who are complaining about it, just get that good and you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly,
You,
exactly. They're
you
going to
know.
favor you if you're the number one
Yeah,
player in the world.
exactly. Exactly. It's a free market. But yeah, he comes out in the all black too, which was sick. Just kind of a
100%.
statement.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into here. So of the top 10 seeds, we got Fritz and Runa. They're the only ones that fell during the first week. I feel like Fritz is having a pretty tough clay season. I don't know if he's had any wins.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
one, but
we're just talking about that like American curse, like the lack of ability to play on clay. And it's exactly what you're saying. A very poor clay season, especially coming off of his best season that put him at his highest ranking ever. And now he's maybe just showing that he's a hard court, really a threat, and on clay is still not at that level.
yeah, it's unfortunate. So he loses first or sorry, second round to Jerome because he had the first round bye. And this was a crazy match too because Jerome was down a double break 0-4 in the second set and then came back and won it in the tiebreaker. And he had nothing but respect for Fritz too. I thought his on-court interview was very classy. He's like, Fritz is a great champion. We've had a couple close matches, but he's gotten me pretty much every time. So I knew it took a lot to beat him, and it means a lot to beat him too, because this is someone who's like the top American, someone who I've like grown up playing with. So I think big credit to him. But how do you like screw up a double break in the second? That's just
Yeah.
nuts. That's all mental.
It seems like it definitely a mental impact. And it's kind of funny because we were talking about Draper last week and we were like, he's been able to convert it seems his ability on hard court and grass that we saw last year onto clay. And Fritz, we're just seeing almost the opposite. Like, yes, he plays well on hardened grass and just can't on clay. And I just think it's an interesting comparison because both those guys are right at that uh, 4 and 5 ranking or spot in
Mhm.
the rankings. And it looks like Draper may be able to pass him even this tournament.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, so you mentioned Rude or Runa also losing the first week. So he goes down in the third round to Mutet. Which one do you think is more disappointing? Runa losing to Mutet or Fritz losing to Jerome?
I think in terms of my expectations, I would say honestly Runa losing to Mutet because I think we think Runa we think of Runa as a very strong player on clay. He's had big performances on clay in the past. Fritz, you look at him on clay and you're like, okay, like we were just saying, not the highest of expectations. It was also kind of a bummer for Runa because he survived match points in that match and then kind of blew a lead in the tiebreak to lose the match in that third set. So definitely a match where he could have gotten it done and wasn't able to.
Yeah, it's such a bummer. I feel like Mutet is such a hard guy to play because he brings in all that like disruption and he's not the most easygoing player either. Like he's always starting fights with the crowd or like pausing the game and just underarm serving, drop shots. So I feel like that's a tough one for Runa because he's not fully like mentally mature yet. So he's gonna get thrown off here. But credit to Mutet, he's had a pretty rough couple of months. Just kind of with the heckling in Miami, and then I know he's taken some time off and he hasn't really had a big result here. So this is his first top 10 win. So good job for him.
100%.
All right, let's get into some other early upsets. We got Shelton. He loses second round to Munar. Davidovich Fokina loses second round to De Jong. And while this is not a crazy upset, I wanted to mention him here because it was definitely a shock, especially since the way he's been playing. I mean, he semied Monte Carlo and he quartered Barcelona and he loses 6-0, 6-2 here. So this was someone that I thought could make a run in Rome.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a match where going in, I would have been completely betting on Davidovich here, but I think it's like when you look at a guy like him where he's played so well to start the year, maybe we talk about that return to the mean where maybe he isn't at that top 10 level yet or top 15 level yet, but he's been playing like he had like he is at that level rather. And
Mhm.
so when you see him lose a match like this, you're kind of surprised, but it's also maybe just the ups and downs of his playing level.
Yeah, I could see him do pretty well. Maybe like a round of 16 in Roland Garros. So get that bad result out of the way here and then come back stronger. I wonder if he's gonna play in between. But anyway, so then we got Rublev. He loses second round to Morozhan, and I just have two words to describe this. Head haunted. You put
100%.
this on my radar because I think you had texted me like, oh, Rublev Morozhan, and then
Yeah. I was
I
just
checked
like,
the odds right
I look at
away.
it, I'm like, okay, you see Morozhan's name, you're like, okay, who's he up against? Is it a big
Exactly.
name? He should be the underdog and may have some good odds to bet on him.
Exactly. And it just so happened he played the guy, Rublev, who whenever I see positive odds against, it's very unfortunate, but I jump all over it. And the fact that it was Morozhan made it that much easier, especially with his big win over Fonseca the week before. That was pretty shocking.
Yeah, he beat Fonseca in the first round there.
Spam the drop shot. I
100%. I
saw
mean, I
that.
just think it's really fun because Marozhan's style is great. This was actually my match of the week,
uh,
but I'll break it down a little bit more then. It's just he has such an interesting style that makes his matches more fun to watch, I think.
Yeah. So that's kind of a good segue into what I want to mention next. So I feel like the next gen guys like Tien and Fonseca, while they are becoming household names, they haven't really broken out in these tournaments. Whereas Mensick and Feast, kind of the more established next gen guys, like they're pretty much establishing themselves as top 20 players here. Whereas the other two, they have a while to go, I feel like. And I just want to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's a maturity thing or do you think it's a skill level? Like, do you think the the other two, Tien and Fonseca, have the same skill, but they're just not doing as well? Or what do you think?
Well, I mean, you look at these guys, they all played in the, like you said, the next gen finals last year. And they clearly, Tien and Fonseca have a very high peak level when they're playing their best, given the fact that they were the two that were in the finals of that tournament. And Fonseca's had some big wins since then. Tien has had some big wins since then. Yes, they have a very high top level. I think Mensik and Feast have shown that they're a little bit more consistent. I mean, the fact that Mensik has now won a Masters 1000 tournament, and now
Yeah, he
he's
beat
coming into these
Djokovic
he's
too.
he's coming into these tournaments now as a seeded guy, and he's not underperforming. Like we look at what Poprin did last year, he won Canada, and then after that, just kind of didn't do much when he was a super high seed. Yes, he did beat Djokovic at the U.S. Open, but he hasn't had any real massive results since then. So I I agree. I feel like Feast and Fonseca, or Feast and Mensik rather, are showing themselves as the higher level guys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see those two in Roland Garros. I will take Feast and Mensick though to go farther. And then next up on the docket, we got a farewell to Fabio Fognini. This one's a sad one. So the 37-year-old announced that this will be his last Italian Open. And unfortunately, he lost to Jacob Fernley in the first round. So we didn't even get to see him make a run. But talk about this guy's legacy. So he beat Novak Djokovic here 19 years ago in the qualies. And then he took 2 years off, I think, because of injury, and has played in this tournament 17 straight times. So just excellent to see. And then I think his best result came in 2019, where he won Monte Carlo. And he had quite the run there, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he beat Zverev in the round of 16 and then Nadal in the semis. And those are not easy guys to beat on clay, I'll say that. So, yeah, I think this actually led to his highest ranking ever, too, being like top 10 in the world.
Wow, yeah. I mean, he'll be missed. I feel like he hasn't really done much on tour recently, but I feel like he's just that household name where you see him, he's pretty entertaining. He's, you know, fun to watch in person. I feel like he's got that famous video. I think it's at Queens where the line judge misses a call and he just like goes all Italian. He's like, no, no, come on. He like throws his racket and like falls to the
Yeah.
floor and is like using his hands. So just a funny guy, but passing on the torch to the younger Italian players like
Yeah.
Caboli,
Yeah. I mean,
Nardi,
I'd say
Darderi, Sinner,
Musetti.
Musetti. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
geez.
you look at where he was, and it was like he's kind of like this token Italian player, right?
Yeah.
That was like good and obviously peaked in the top 10, but was never like uh he wasn't like a Songa or like a Burdich or a Monfils, even where he was much more competitive with the big three. I feel like he had his moments, but wasn't always at that level. And now you look at where Italian tennis is, and it's like maybe he helped elevate it to get it there.
Yeah, you know what I'll say? I think he walked so that they can run.
Exactly, exactly.
But yeah, his stroke, he always just looked so laid back too, like hitting his forehands.
Mm.
All right. And then we got some drama here. We got Feast and Tsitsipas. Of course, when you hear either of these two, you know there's going to be drama. So Tsitsipas tagged Feast. What happened was Feast hit a drop shot. Tsitsipas came in. And honestly, the best shot was to just go right at him. And I think Tsitsipas even said, like, what? Like, that's the lowest part of the net where it was, like, with the angle. Like, what do you want me to do? And it wasn't like he like fucking ripped it at him. It was just kind of like, all right, he knew he was gonna hit him, so he didn't hit it as hard as he could. But then at the end of the match, the handshake got pretty spicy. It was one of those where Feast like shook his hand, but then pulled him in and like wasn't letting go. And then they were arguing. I couldn't really understand what, but then the ref came down from the chair. He tried to split it up, and then they eventually separated. They looked pretty pissed at each other, but in his interview after on court, he even mentioned he's like, yeah, it's part of the game, and it actually fired me up. Like I know he didn't do it on purpose, but I used it as motivation. Like that's what got me pissed, and that's what helped me win the match ultimately because I lost the first set.
Yeah. I mean, it's just funny to think about whenever you see Tsitsipas in a drama like this, and you think of that Kyrgios versus Tsitsipas match at Wimbledon, where I feel kind of like Tsitsipas was on the other side of this. Like he got pissed off by what because of what Kyrgios did, and then was angry at him, and now he hits Feast with the ball, and you're like, okay, now are you on Curious side? Like, what's the shift in attitude here?
Yeah, I know. I think Tsitsipas was really upset. Like he was very apologetic when it happened, but I think he was upset that Feast like took it to heart and like got pissed off because I don't know. I think Tsitsipas just like wasn't expecting it. Like I think, once he did, he was expecting like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. But Feast, I think, just went like straight demon mode. And yeah, I mean, I kind of love when that happens, especially when it's Tsitsipas because he's is just a walking drama. And Feast does not back down. Like he's a tough kid. He's young, but he is not afraid to hang with the big guys on tour. He's gotten
100%.
into beefs with Zverev too, which I'll mention later. So,
Yeah, I mean the funny thing about this match is not really a rivalry. Like Tsitsipas with many
mm-mm.
players, Feast
Yeah,
has beaten him every single time they've played,
yeah,
including I think earlier this year when Tsitsipas retired against him. But still, it's like a 4-0 head to head. So pretty much one sided there.
yeah. I know. And then next up, we got Alcaraz. He shows up 9 hours before his match to warm up. I thought this was hilarious because there was a video on social media, and Zverev just goes like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then Alcaraz is like, "What? I wanted to get here early so I can watch the Real Madrid Barca match." And then Zverev's like, "What? Like 9 hours before your match?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to watch it in peace." And then Zverev goes, "Nice to see where your priorities are at." So I just thought it was a pretty funny interaction because no matter how hard Zverev like tries to joke around with people, he just comes off as like such a dick.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking here. He's like, is he trying to be kind of petty with that comment?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I think it's just the culture of being German. I think Germans are very like straightforward and like, you
yeah,
know,
I mean,
I don't know.
here's the I mean, Alcaraz maybe just wanted to watch it in like a different setting rather than like his hotel room. Like he wanted to go out somewhere to watch it, and
Yeah.
I guess Zverev was not the guy to meet up with. I mean,
Yeah.
what Zverev? What are you doing 9 hours before your match, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like,
know.
oh, you're
I
gonna
know.
mentally prepare for 9 hours in a row before the match happens? No, you're not,
Yeah.
dude.
It's just funny seeing that dynamic on tour, right? Like because these guys, they know each other so well because they're always with each other every single week. But then you got an older veteran like Zverev, who Alcaraz kind of owns, at least in Grand Slams. And I don't know about head to head exactly, but I feel like talking down to someone who's younger than you, he's trying to put him in his place, even though Alcaraz is a better tennis player than he is.
Exactly.
Like it's
Yeah, I don't
awkward,
know.
you know?
Definitely awkward.
Yeah, and then we got Draper. Draper smashed his racket after missing 4 break points, and this was shocking because he was up a set and a break when he did it. So he's getting a lot of hate on X about being entitled, and I just want to hear what you think about Draper smashing his racket after being up like so much too.
Uh, I think he dude can do whatever he wants, right? Like
Hmm.
if maybe that's just how he needs to get motivated, right? It's like I think sometimes you're like, okay, oh maybe he's up so much, why does he care, right? But I think if you take that attitude sometimes, that's why people can let an opponent back into a match, right? It's like maybe if Fritz had smashed his racket after being up 2 breaks against Giron, he would have stayed in that match, right?
Hmm.
You look at these situations where Draper is just saying, "I can't lose this game," and then he loses it, and he's just so frustrated because he knows it was a great chance to win that game. And if he lets his foot off the gas and says, "No, it's okay, I'm still up by a lot," maybe all of a sudden he won't be up by a lot anymore. So I think it's
Hmm.
just being competitive, and I don't get where the entitled aspect comes in. Like, could you explain a little bit more about what they meant by that?
I don't know exactly what they meant, but the exact comment was this just screams entitlement and is pure evil. And what I'll say to that, I know. What I'll say to that is I think with Draper's recent success, he's now under a microscope. So people are gonna come after him. If Draper was ranked, I don't know, 100 in the world and he smashed his racket, no one would even be talking about it. But because he's a top 5 player now, everything he does is under scrutiny. So people are going to have to say something, it is what it is. I don't really care that he smashed his racket. I agree with you. I think it shows passion and how much he cares about tennis.
I mean, he gets a warning still. It's not like there's no consequence for him doing it.
Mhm.
I think there's, what do you mean entitled? Like, oh, because some people don't have rackets or something like that. What's the argument
I don't know.
of him
Maybe
being entitled? Just
because he's beating the opponent. Maybe that's why.
like
Like
it's
pretty badly.
you're beating the opponent, so you're not allowed to get frustrated.
I don't know. I think people are too old fashioned sometimes when it comes to tennis,
I
right?
what here's
It's
my
supposed to be a
my
gentleman's
comment
game.
would be. Here's what my comment would be. Right? Someone's like, oh, if I was up that much, I wouldn't be get angry. And my response is like, yeah, that's why you're not playing in this tournament because you're not competitive enough,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not in that mental state that he's in.
Mhm.
So I think their opinion is meaningless. I mean, to an extent, my opinion's meaningless too, but I still feel like you shouldn't be judging these players on what they can and can't do, really.
I agree. I agree with you. I think Draper is kind of a hothead on the court, which I don't mind. I like seeing it. Like he does show a lot of attitude. And I remember I sent you a video, I think last week, of the rude moonball return on his serve. And after that, Draper like cussed out a fan. He's like, "Shut the fuck up,"
Yeah.
because
I
they
mean,
talked while he was trying to serve his serve. So I mean, hey,
yeah, it's like
it's
in golf when
feisty.
someone hits a bat is like in their backswing and someone talks. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
why do
yeah.
you want to make yourself part of the match? Like that's so unnecessary.
Hmm. All right, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about the 2024 finalist, Nicholas Jarry. He loses second round this week. He got a win over Gaston, but then loses to Cerundolo, which pretty tough draw for him. But I wanted to mention this because he was a top 20 player at this time last year. But now he came in this week at number 53, and now with this loss, he falls out of the top 100. So, just talking about a fall from grace here, like I'm just wondering, do you think we'll ever see him back in the top 20?
I mean, I feel as though he must have some underlying injury. There must be something going on
Yeah.
because, like you said, that's a pretty significant fall, and it doesn't. I feel like it's not age, so there's something going on, whether it's mentally, whether it's physical. I know he had a foot injury at one point, but yeah, it's tough to speculate based on his downward trajectory right now whether he'll ever get back up that high.
Yeah, I don't think top 20, but I'm hoping for 50. I'm hoping for a turnaround here. And this was someone I was extremely bullish on. Remember, if you're an early listener of the podcast, I was
Yeah,
raving about
back in
this guy. Like,
2023, he was like,
yeah,
you were all aboard the Jari train.
I was all aboard. And then I think my comment was like in 2023, this guy will be a top 20 player next year.
Yeah,
And he cracked it. I think his career high was maybe like 19,
yeah,
18, but just crazy to see at this point last year he was in the finals as a top 20 player and now he couldn't be further from it.
yeah. I mean, honestly, speaking of players that were doing really well this time last year, Tabilo, right? Both
Yeah, I
Chileans did
saw
really
him. Yeah.
great in Rome, and now they're kind of nowhere. So I don't know what happened to that moment for Chilean tennis, but it's
Yeah.
not happening right now.
Yeah, hopefully they can figure it out.
Yeah.
Speaking of Zverev, we have another awkward interaction here. So he kind of gets into it with an interviewer on his on-court interview after the match, and the interviewer kind of rubbed him the wrong way. He said this. He goes, "You've had a couple early exits in Masters series this year, so how nice is it to get one under your belt?" And then Zverev goes, "I mean, I won a tournament 2 weeks ago, so I really don't like to think about stupid questions. That's your job." And I was just like, "Oh, got him."
Yeah. I mean, I think it is kind of a stupid question. Like, why would you uh ask him about his losses after a win, right? It's like you don't want, like, it just feels like a shot kind of.
It
And
is. Yeah.
I feel like it's a setup for a response like this, right? Which is kind of stupid because it seems as though that's what a lot of news is about now, is just creating a headline. It's like, oh, you ask a stupid question, you make the guy angry, he does something, and then that's the headline, is like, Zverev calls interviewer stupid, says
Mhm.
interviewer has stupid questions. It's like, if you just ask a normal question, I guess it's not going to get as many clicks, but that's just, it's just frustrating to see that that's what kind of media and journalism has fallen to.
I agree with you about what you said about them just setting him up because if it were any other, I don't know, like I'm thinking of maybe a Sinner. Like I don't think they ask Sinner the same question. I know or I think that they can get an interaction out of Zverev. So they're going to ask him that. And he's kind of a, like I said, he's not really a likable player for most people. And of course, on social media, he gets just completely blasted for saying this. Like, how rude is he to the interviewer? But no one's talking about how rude the interviewer is to Zverev because, he's the player and no
Yeah,
one
I
knows
mean
who the interviewer
it's
is.
like if someone said the
It's a
same
double
thing to
standard.
Kyrgios, right? It's like
Hmm
Kyrgios is gonna not hold anything back, and so you're gonna get an interesting response if you ask him a question that might get a rise out of him. So that's what they do, even if it's not necessarily a kind or right thing to do.
hmm All right, so that about wraps up week one. Let's get into some week two preview. I feel like there's some exciting matches here on my radar, and the first one is Zverev Feast. So this one is a rivalry in the making, if not already a rivalry. It's 3-2 Zverev, and they've gone back and forth on wins. So Feast beat him in Miami, Zverev beat him before in Paris, and then Feast beat him in Hamburg in the final with all that underarm serve drama and whatnot. So I feel like these two are going in just not liking each other, and I'm super excited for this match.
100%, and it is my bet of the week, so I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Nice, nice. And then next up, we got Sinner Cerundolo. So Cerundolo beat Sinner here at this tournament back in 2023. And I feel like this is the first time in the tournament that Sinner is going to be pushed or likely pushed. He faced Navoni and De Jong first couple rounds, so I feel like some good warm-up matches for him. But this one, Cerundolo is no joke.
100%. I mean, speaking of match or bet of the week, I was looking at this one. Serrano is a pretty big underdog, but you look at how he's been playing recently, how much, I mean, I've been talking about him a lot because have been very impressed with how he's been playing. And Sinner, I think this is going to be the match that shows us does Sinner have rust? Because I think if we look at this match, maybe at the beginning of the year, we'd be like, Sinner has this one in the bag. But with how hot Sarundalo's been and Sinner's lack of play, it could be, like you said, a real threat to Sinner's run here.
Yeah, definitely. And then we got Tommy Paul and Alex Deminar. These are I think, the highest seeds playing. So the 11 and the 7 seed. Dude, Tommy Paul is 0 and 5 against Deminar. I did not realize that. But
Yeah.
they've only played once on clay, and it was back in 2022. So I feel like this match is still up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't know that he was 0 and 5 either.
I
I
know.
thought it was going to be a closer matchup there. I think maybe the argument of why you would expect that is they have a little bit of a similar game, kind of grindy, and I think Deminar is just the best grinder out there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
at least right now, obviously we have Nadal being the ultimate grinder, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so maybe that's why he just does it a little bit better. But yeah, on clay, we know Tommy Paul is not a bad clay player. He's probably the best American on clay, arguably, and I think could be an exciting match to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this before, but Deminar, he just gets it done against people ranked less than he is, like most of the time. So he'll make good runs in tournaments, but then lose to better players. And I feel like the reason he's 0 or 5 and 0 against Tommy is just because he knows how to get it done against lower ranked players. But now Tommy's a lot better than he was. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm definitely going to tune into this one.
100%.
And then last up, we got Musetti and Medvedev, the 8 and the 10 seed. Medvedev is 2-0 against him, but I think Musetti beats him here.
Yeah, so similar kind of level matchup to the Tommy Paul Alex Deminar, right?
Yeah.
But I think yeah, we were looking at the lines for this one too, and Musetti, even though he, like you said, Medvedev does have the head-to-head advantage, Musetti is actually favored just I think based on how they've played in 2025 and the fact that we know Medvedev isn't a big fan of clay. I think yeah, this will be an interesting one to watch. I definitely feel as though Musetti is favored for sure, and
Yeah.
I would be honestly kind of surprised if Medvedev was able to beat him.
Yeah, it's funny just based on name recognition and career. If you would have told me like last year that Musetti's favored to beat Medvedev, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at where Musetti was maybe this time last year, and then you look at he was probably what in the teens somewhere, and
Yeah.
he's still kind of ranked in a relatively similar spot. He's moved up a little bit, like we know, but I think and Medvedev's just dropped. They've kind of almost switched places,
Yeah.
right? Musetti's
Yeah.
now gone from teens to top 10, and Medvedev's dropped just out of the top 10. But I think Musetti established himself when we saw that run at like Wimbledon,
Wimbledon, yeah.
and since then he won the bronze medal at the Olympics.
Hmm.
So he's shown since in the past year essentially that he is a legitimate contender.
Yeah. So which of these matches are you most excited to see?
Honestly, these are all pretty exciting. I think the closest match will probably be Tommy Paul Alex Deminar.
Mhm.
I think I'm interested to see Sinner Sorrentalo the most though.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a great like Masters week too. You got these. I think some other matches. I know Rude plays I think Munar and then Alcaraz plays Hachinov, but I didn't think those were really worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean like Alcaraz Hachinov would have been a more exciting matchup when Hachinov was
Yeah.
higher ranked, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it's not going to be a walkover for Alcaraz. I'll say that.
No, definitely not, especially with his recent injury.
Yeah, I mean, unless it is a walkover and Hachinov gets injured.
Literally,
What
yeah.
I mean is, it's not going to be an easy, super easy match necessarily. But
Oh, that's
anyway,
funny.
you ready to hop into segments here?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Alrighty, what's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
So I saw Djokovic, he accepted a wild card to play in the Geneva Open, and I thought this was pretty interesting. He's 12-7 this season, three-match losing streak, still has not had a win on clay. So it kind of makes sense why he's doing this because he pulled out of Rome and he's going to need a warm up for Roland Garros. So I think this is kind of a good tune up for him. And I think I know why he pulled out of Rome because originally he had pulled out with no explanation, but he was spotted with a knee brace in a picture or warming up. So likely the reason. And like I said, this is supposed to be a tune up for him, but I feel like it carries a lot of risk because if he loses or he gets hurt, he just pretty much destroys all the rhythm going into Roland Garros. But um, big win for the tournament because they get to market the hell out of him. Like this is a 250. It's a small tournament, and just wanted to mention that Rude is going for a four-peat. He has won this tournament three times already: 2021, 2022, and then last year in 2024. So I feel like all eyes were going to be on Rude, but now they're on Djokovic. And just something
Yeah,
else I thought, he's kind of taking away a wild card from another player, but whatever.
yeah. I mean, you can't really fault him for that. If he wants a wild card, he can take
I
it.
was
But
gonna say, yeah,
yeah,
people are kind of up in arms about like, oh, what about like a younger Swiss player or something? But I
yeah,
think the tournament's gonna take Djokovic as a wild card any day of the week.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think he may also want that maybe a thousandth title,
The,
right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
this may be a
yeah,
good
yeah.
chance for him to just collect it in a tournament
Yeah.
where, yes, Rude is there, and Rude's not an easy guy to beat, especially on clay. But other than that, there aren't going to be that many big names, probably.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think Fritz is playing it, which doesn't mean much.
Yeah, we said big clay names.
Yeah, true, true. What about you? What did you see this week?
I saw that Runa said that the Italian Open courts are quote dangerous and not playable. And he essentially claimed like it's tough to move around and that this could lead to increased fatigue and the possibility of an injury. And I think he's considering this is like a major issue when you're leading up to a major like the French Open, right? You don't want
Mhm.
to risk players getting injured going into one of the four biggest tournaments of the year. And I just think it's kind of crazy to see this when there were rumors that like the Italian Open wanted to become like the fifth major and they can't even make their courts like acceptable for top players. So just an interesting thing to see with another kind of controversy with the players complaining about the conditions of a tournament.
Yeah, just another one right here. And I'm going to keep my eyes open for more players to complain too, because I feel like if it's just Runa, it could be a him thing. But if other players start speaking out about it too, it becomes a real issue because, Rune lost early, so he could just be complaining about it.
Yeah, but I think this was before his loss. Actually,
It
I
was
believe it was
okay. Yeah.
after he won a match, and he was just upset with how the conditions were.
Yeah, that's just not acceptable, especially for a Masters 1000. And like you said, they want to be a fifth slam.
Yeah. How about bet of the
Unfortunate.
week?
Bet of the week, I'm going with Tommy Paul versus Deminar over 2.5 sets at plus 120. So I hit on this type of bet last week with Greek Sport and Kecmanovic going over the 2.5 sets. So I'm going to try it again. I mean, there's really not much to say. I think these are two great players. I think they're going to push each other, and I think they split sets and it goes to a third.
Yeah, I like we said, this is probably
Grinders, man. Yeah.
the like we thought the highest closest matchup of these high level players going into this week. So I agree. This could definitely go to 3 sets.
How about you? Who are you taking?
I'm going with Feast plus 140 over Zverev. I mean, we talked about this one earlier. Yes, it is 3-2 head to head in Zverev's favor, but not only did Feast win their last matchup, he also won their last matchup on clay, like you mentioned. So I do think that while Feast did lose early in Madrid, 2 of his last 3 losses have been to Alcaraz. So it's not like he's been playing poorly on clay, even if he hasn't had a major result. And I think you look at what Zverev's done. He's had one good tournament since the Australian Open. Like, this is kind of what the reporter was saying. Obviously, we're not saying it to Zverev's face, but it's the truth. He's had one good tournament since the Australian Open, really. So I don't have the highest of expectations, but he comes up against a tough opponent like Feast.
Yeah, I love this bet. I'm taking Feast too. I'm just not confident in him in Zverev.
100%. Yeah. And then how about match of the week?
Match of the week, I went with Leonard Tien taking down Riley Opelka, and I chose this one just because of how random it is. Like, I thought it was pretty interesting. I didn't really know what to expect going in here. You got a 27-year-old serve bot versus like a 18, 19-year-old pure baseliner. And I honestly thought that Tien would not be able to handle the Opelka serve, and he couldn't at first. He went down early, got broken in the first set, but then battled back and ended up winning the first set on an Opelka double fault. So, shows his perseverance and his adaptability too to get on top of that serve. And then the second set was a tense one. It went to a tiebreaker, and then Opelka had to save 4 match points, but Tien finally converted on the fifth one and won. So, pretty interesting match just to see the two. Like I said, the dichotomy, but also there was one rally in there where there were 10 backhand slices just like to each other, and it was so tense because it's like, all right, you know how when you get in a slice off, you just kind of think like, all right, who's gonna mess up first? Who's gonna do it? And
Yeah.
it ended up Riley just ended up approaching on his 10th slice and then got passed.
Yeah. So usually, I mean, you look at like the top level guys, and it's like slice, 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 and someone's like, okay, we're gonna go back to topspin now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like we're
yeah.
not just gonna sit in a slice battle. So I think what happened there was Tien's probably thinking, I don't have to change it up. If he's gonna keep
Yeah.
slicing it, I'm very comfortable to sit at the baseline. He's probably at the disadvantage, and that's why Opelka eventually had to change it up with something. But yeah, I think it's one of those matchups where you think about realistically, if the rally goes over like 3 shots, then Tien pretty much has the advantage, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Tien's just
totally.
trying to keep the ball in play for like 3 shots, and then he has a massive like step up on Opelka based on their style of play and honestly level, I think.
100%. I mean, I think Opelka tried to beat Tien at his own game, like baselining, when I think he should have just fully embraced the bot and
Yeah.
kind
Yeah,
of done that. But maybe the clay, maybe he couldn't really get his serve and volley game on.
maybe.
But it was funny. Tien was like at one point, he was almost out of the camera angle. That's how far back he was on the serves.
Yeah, Opelka gotta figure out how to maybe start throwing in some underarms, start learning from
Yeah,
Buklik.
yeah, I know. How about you? What was your match of the week?
Like I mentioned
Actually,
earlier,
yeah, I know this one.
I went with Morojan
Yeah.
taking another scalp in 3 sets. Uh, I just think I mentioned his fun style, but just those flat shots and then that incredible soft touch on his drop shots is just it's so fun because you can have tense baseline rallies, and then every once in a while he'll slip in that not even every once in a while, pretty often he slips in that drop shot, and then that can either be a clean winner or it can lead to some interesting fast hand points at the net. So just going through this match, I mean, he got broken early in the first set, battles back to even it up, ends up taking the set 7-5 with another break. And the first set honestly started this trend, which was seen in the whole match, which was Morozhan could not really execute on break points, to be honest. I mean, he tended to need a few per game to actually convert the break. Second set, kind of similar story, a ton of long games. But the story of the set was Rublev went 2 of 3 on break points and Morozhan went 1 of 7. And so Rublev ended up taking it. And then Rublev broke again to start the third. And what that actually meant was Rublev broke Morozhan's serve in the first game of every single set. And Morozhan didn't let it affect him. He broke back immediately. And that actually went up a second break. And then he actually had a chance to win the match at 2-5, where Rublev was serving and stayed in the match after defending 2 break match points. And then at 5-3, another super tense game. So back-to-back super long, tense games where Rublev actually was up 40-15 with Morozhan serving, but Morozhan was able to hang on and it ended up closing it out on his 4th match point. So it's one of those matches where even though Morozhan didn't necessarily convert very well on his kind of critical points, he still was able to eventually get it done just because he generated so many.
Wow. Any Rublev outbursts?
I mean, I think Morozhan kind of sets him up for the outburst, right? So yeah, a little bit. But I just think, overall fun match just with how Morozhan plays.
Yeah, and he adds a hairy scalp. Rublev's got a lot of hair on his head.
Exactly.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.